Warning, this episode contains mild to heavy explicit spoilers. Listen at your own risk.
Reviews, discussions, and theories about films in horror, sci-fi, and genre. This is The Horror Deconstruction. Like, share, and subscribe to hear more.
What's up, everybody? It's The Horror Deconstruction. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, most likely on YouTube. Give us a like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon, hit that thumbs up. Let people know you listen to the show with your host, KOMP and
DECKARD.
So today's film is
The Killer.
The Killer, 2023. After a fateful near miss, an assassin battles his employers and himself on an international manhunt he insists isn't personal. Directed by David Fincher, written by Alex... Oh, that's the comic based by Alex Nolent, Luke Giacomone, and Andrew Kevin Walker obviously wrote this. Starring Michael Fassbender, Tilda Swinton, and Charles Parnell. So, give me a little bit of history on The Killer, if you can, DECKARD.
This is a movie that I think David Fincher has been trying to make for a long time. I think he said over 10 years he's been trying to make this film, or it's been in his mind's eye to make it. I think somebody gave him the graphic novel or the comics or whatever. It's a graphic novel, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah, it's a series of 10 graphic novels.
Okay, and so yeah, I think he's been wanting to make this for a while, and then he eventually made it after Mank.
Which his last movie's 2020, right? That was the last film he did
2020.
in 2020.
And I think he has like a 2 or 3 picture deal with Netflix on top of, like, obviously he did Mindhunter and...
Let's hold a moment of silence for Mindhunter. Okay, that's enough.
I'm
still sad about
House
that
of Cards. Yeah, me too. House of
Let's have a
Cards.
moment of silence for House of Cards. It seems like his projects tend to be doomed from one reason or another. But, no, what are you going to do? But go ahead.
So he got a picture deal with Netflix, and so he's, what I think David Fincher said, you know what, I'm not going to go through the hassle of working with studios and putting movies out in theaters, because I think he has more creative control doing this, working through Netflix, because Netflix just pretty much, puts up the money and lets him do whatever he wants. You know what I mean? So this is where he's at right now. And this is actually, thinking about it now, Mank came out in 2020. This is 2023. It's a pretty fast turnaround for him.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
He takes a little longer between films. I think before Mank it was Gone Girl, which was 2014.
Oof.
So that was a big. Obviously, he did the Mindhunter and In Between, so he was still working.
Right.
And obviously he and he shot a bunch of commercials too. But as far as feature films, this is a pretty quick turnaround for him, and which is totally fine with us. But
yes,
yeah. So it was in theaters for a couple weeks. I think it's still in theaters now, but now it's on Netflix, and we got to watch it.
And it's got a good buzz on Netflix, which is great. A lot of people talking about it online, so that's a good sign for it. Michael Fassbender, obviously, a guy who's like should be A+. Is that what I mean? Is that the phrase that they use for people that are top tier actors?
A-list,
you know what I mean?
A-list.
Excuse me, A-list. What am I thinking? Yeah, like he should be A-list, but he doesn't seem to be as freak, because he's like an actual sports car racer. Like he races cars. So like it's that that's obviously I think a big passion of his. He's also married to Alicia Vikander. When I remember I was like, this is like the Tomb Raider lady, and then I saw her in the television, the HBO. I think it's HBO. Yeah, the HBO series version of Irma Vep, which I implore anybody to watch that show. There was an original film. It's the same director. I can't think of the guy's name. Oh, Oliver Assayas. He's sort of this very unique director. But he made a film called Irma Vep, and it's about a doomed film. And it's not like a horror movie or anything like that, but it's just like a doomed film that has like everything wrong that could happen. Incredible.
Yeah, I watched one episode with the one with Kristen Stewart in it.
Oh yeah, oh man, I don't know how you felt about it, because it's a very unique show. But the movie, like if you saw the film and then you watch the show, I can't speak highly enough of a television series. We're not here to talk about that show, but please watch Irma Vep. It's an incredible film.
Let me just ask a question.
Go ahead.
Because I noticed in that episode, like, her character walks
She's only in one
walls.
episode. Oh, yeah. That's not a normal thing in the show. That's not a normal thing in the show. That happened.
Like,
I don't know. I can't explain what that was. I saw the show. That's a very David Lynch thing that happens towards the end of the series, and I still don't know what that meant. But I think it's because she's like, she's trying to take on this role of this vampire woman. Irma Vep, obviously, where all the letters are on, it means vampire. And so even I didn't know that, even though I saw the movie and then the show, I was like, oh yeah, vampire. She feels like she doesn't have any agency in her own life. So she puts on the cat suit of the character that she's portraying, who's this like mysterious assassin who's like a vampire, right? Or not really a vampire, but just a person who's an assassin. You can't see her. So when she puts on this suit, she feels almost like a superhero, but this is towards the end of the series. So she's kind of walking in and out of other people's lives to like steal little things and then to like spy on them. So I don't know whether the walking through walls is actual, like, something that's happening or it's, like, you know, a part of a thing. But either way, it's an incredible thing. And I'm sure when you saw that, you were like, what the hell am I watching? But you'd have to watch the series. It's a fantastic series. Anyway, going back to this, and Kristen Stewart was great in that. She's only in one episode, but she's great in that, too. But speaking of somebody who's worked with Kristen Stewart is David Fincher, obviously. That's a good way to lean back into that, right? So, obviously, like, it's David Fincher.
Oh, that's perfect, too. That's perfect, too, because we're gonna talk about that. Because I feel like this movie is very, like, side by side with Panic Room.
Okay, fair enough. Because I remember, like, when I'm reading stuff, like, I was reading people's ideas about this film. There's people either really love it or people that are underwhelmed by it. Not many people underwhelmed by it, but I did read one post where somebody said it's his second worst film besides Alien 3. And I was like, it's not. I don't see it that way. I'm like, there's no way that this is like a worse movie than anything. Because obviously you and I are both gigantic, like, unashamed, unabashed fans of David Fincher and his work. I think the guy's brilliant. And I can't explain what it is. Obviously, technically, you can understand it just by looking at his films, how great his films are. But there's like a through line with all his films that are, and his favorite, or one of his most known phrases is that people are perverts in general, and he likes to capture that on film. And I don't know what it is because tonally, a lot of his films are very cold. And you might even say that that doesn't account for Benjamin Button, because it's but Benjamin Button I kind of had a little issue with, even though I thought it was a beautiful film. I've never seen Brad Pitt look more handsome in a movie besides Interview with a Vampire, because there was a part where he's on a boat, right? He's like on a boat, and I remember this clearly because I was in a movie theater. I was working at a theater at the time, and I walked in on this scene where he's on a boat. He's just wearing like Ray-Ban sort of sunglasses, and the air is like hitting him, and you could hear everybody in the audience going, because this motherfucker, like, David Fincher caught the most handsome man ever on film for this one image, and it was like something you'd seen out of a 1940s film. And like, Fincher just knows. He just knows, like, obviously Seven, Panic Room, what was the other one? Zodiac, my favorite, my personal favorite film is Fight Club. Obviously, all his films, there's this through line of there's this coldness and people just being like, what would you say is like a through line of his films?
I
think it's definitely in here. Whatever that is in those films is definitely inside this film.
You know what's funny too? This would have been a perfect film for the nihilism episode, because this film is, I think it is his most nihilistic film. But anyway, I think he likes to capture sort of like the dark underbelly of like human existence, but like not in a way that's sort of like dour. He always has this sort of like deadpan humor to his dark humor to all his films and his characters. But the thing is too, like, yeah, his films are cold, but they always have an emotional connection.
Right.
Like, even if his films are dark and brooding, they're never overly to the point where you're like, fuck, I can't watch this. This is too depressing. He never does that.
Yeah, there's something very quirky about his films.
Quirky.
That it's
quirky.
It's quirky, but not in a corny way. It's just like there's a dark humor. It's very much like Lynch, like David Lynch. Like if you ever try to like if you can't like understand what his movie is about or anything, like if you watch Twin Peaks: The Return, which is an incredible series, there's a dark show, but then Lynch will show up as himself as this guy who needs like hearing aid to talk and stuff, and it's funny. Do you know what I mean? It's like obviously I don't know if he thinks it's funny, but it's funny to me. He must have a sense of humor to put that in the show. You know what I mean? And Fincher for sure. If you ever seen him interviewed, he's a funny guy. He's got that very dry sense of humor, and that's peppered throughout any work that he does. Even in Zodiac, there was like I can't remember laughing that much during Zodiac, but I'm sure there was something funny about that movie. But
there's funny moments. He likes to put in those little asides that characters kind of like talking to each other, back and forth. It's it's never a super comedic. It's always has to do with the plot. But then it's like these little quirky moments that characters have with each other. Right. And it feels very realistic. It doesn't feel like overly done. It's not even like, I know you compared it to Lynch, which is true. Like Lynch has these really weird, funny shit in his films and television series. But Fincher like it's grounded in the way Fincher does it. Like he makes it feel realistic. He never makes it feel like over the top or like super silly or like super weird. It always fits in with what he's doing. You know what I mean? But I think his overall his themes are like the characters are always these like misanthropes, people who are like out of, they don't belong or they're sort of like the outsiders. They're
very much outsiders, right? Exactly. So I mean, going to the trivia, it says the graphic novel "The Killer," written by Alex Nolen, illustrated by Luc Jacamon. It's spelled Jacamon, so I assume it's Jacamon. Has been a passion project for David Fincher for nearly 20 years, and I think this feels like a film that would have played 20 years ago. And I think he didn't change anything. Like there's no aesthetic change because it really feels like a Fincher film. It feels like a prime Fincher movie. Now I don't mean like prime as in it's as great as Seven or anything like that, but I think it's like it's still up there. And like after I saw it, I was like, I want to watch this again. And I don't do that for any new movies. It might be the fact that it's a David Fincher project. You know what I mean? I'm like, I want to watch a David Fincher movie again because I
watched it 3 times already. I watched it 3 times.
There you go, exactly. But I gotta do that too because it was just like, and it was one of the first Netflix movies in a long time where I turned the subtitles off so I can see the full screen. I turned on the subtitle only once or twice because if I couldn't understand what a character was saying, I'll just play that scene again and then just watch that. But then I turned it off for the film because I want to see everything on screen. And I tried to read the Killer graphic novel because I do read graphic novels and stuff like that. But it just didn't connect for me. So like I just like there's something about the art but I think the reason why it connected with Fincher is because the first 15 minutes is basically like a monologue, right? Like when he's trying to set up this shot at his first assassin's job in this movie, and the comic is like that. It's basically like a killer who's waxing poetic. And I don't think I think besides like the main character and other people, there's no real, I don't think they pulled a lot from the book because I read like the first book, I read sort of the first book and I was kind of skimming through the rest of them, and the book ends completely different from like the 10th book is like in Antarctica and he's by himself. It's nothing like what's happening in this movie, and the character is always wearing sunglasses, which isn't what this character does. But to kind of skip through the book, the movie is done in chapters, I assume maybe because it's supposed to be taken from a graphic novel. Tell me about the mood of the film. What did you get from this film?
It's just fascinating. I mean, this is just what David Fincher's work does for me. Like it's the same thing with Mindhunter. Like I think I already told you this. I watched like the first or second seasons. The first season I watched like 12 times through.
Wow.
Like even though he didn't direct every episode,
it's still
because
had his blood in it, his DNA in it.
It still had, they had. I heard that the directors had to follow a very specific way to shoot, because they wanted it to be all connective, and feel like it was from him. Obviously he couldn't. I mean, there's some directors that do every episode, but he didn't want to do it. but the thing about this film, and you know what's weird about it? It's like, and I also read like a lot of negative reviews about it too.
Okay.
Like how you were saying before, like people were like, they didn't like the ending. They felt it was anticlimactic and whatever. But even from like the synopsis, what that synopsis reads technically doesn't really happen in the movie.
No, it doesn't.
Which is weird. I'm like, wait a minute. Because the synopsis makes you feel like you're going to watch something completely different. You're like, okay, you know, something's going to go wrong and then but it's really not that. It's much more simplified.
You go in thinking that it's going to be him, like the accountant, like a Ben Affleck movie where he's killing 100 guys just to get to one person. That's what you think's going to happen, but it's nothing like that.
And then he has to go through these, you know, set pieces. But, I mean, there are set pieces in the film, but it doesn't happen that way. It's just much more simplified.
His first kill is literally his boss. It's like that, like you would think would be the last guy, you know what I mean, in a film like this.
The crazy shit is that we never see him assassinate anybody on his job, like as a job.
Yeah, he fucks just up. See him, that's what happened.
He just fucks up the first job that we ever see him, and we never see him like go through successfully go through a job. It's just after that, then he's just trying to like find the pieces and clean up what he did. You know what I mean? Which is crazy shit. It's amazing. I love that about it. You know what I mean? And I feel like this film is...
and the thing is, I don't think he's a sympathetic... I don't even like the character, honestly, but I was sort of with him.
He's not.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
he's not a sympathetic guy. Because he not only does he fuck up, he kills everybody else who's trying to make him pay for the gigantic mistake that he did. But for the fact that you're following this character, but because he's so compelling, because Fincher has made such a compelling character, you're watching it. And obviously, I'm sorry to cut off what you were saying before, so I just want to get to what you were talking about.
Oh no, and then so that's the amazing thing about this film is that it's pretty much a procedural film. It's you're just seeing this character go through this little moment in time of his life where he fucks up, and then he has to try to, obviously when he screws up, they go for something that's close to him, his girlfriend, you know, that lives in his safe house. And so then all it is him, the procedural, you know, aspects of him trying to figure out why they did it, and then also getting revenge in some certain way, but in a very simplified version of it. You know what I mean? And this film is all about the mechanics of him moving through the world. That's all this movie is. There's no real plot. Mm-hmm. There's no real, you know, emotional connection. I mean, we don't even know his girlfriend. We see her one time, really, or twice. We see her at the end.
And
yeah,
so that felt it's really very like tacked on. Honestly, that part was like, she didn't seem like to be important to the film, other than to give him a reason, like a reverse MacGuffin or something. Yeah,
right.
And the thing is, there's a big conversation that happens towards the end of the film between him and Tilda Swinton. People were saying Tilda Swinton was wasted in the movie. I was like, no, she was fucking good in this movie. Like, she's good. Mm-hmm. Tilda Swinton's pretty much good in anything that she's in. And the fact that they, with such little screen time that she is at the end of this film, I think she did great. Because she was basically calling him out on his shit. Because I think what a lot of people miss in this film, and I sort of understood after a little bit more about it, is that what I ended up interpreting in this film is that he's living this sort of mechanical life where he's just sort of going through the motions. Because, you know, his line in the film is, I just don't give a fuck. And that's his thing, you know?
Right.
And so he just is going on with life. He was studying to be a lawyer until that his boss told him to get into the assassin business, and he can live a little bit more freer life like that. So what I'm thinking is, because he made this whole big deal in the first 15 minutes of the film about setting up this shot, and we see him going through these repetitive motions, and he was tired of not doing anything, about making sure that this one and only shot that he's going to take has to be at a certain pinpoint, because the bullet, you know, will catch at wind, and you have to make sure your heart rate's at a certain at 60 beats per second, or whatever the fuck it is, and like he fucks that shot up and he shoots the woman instead, and, you know, the prostitute at the beginning of the film. And then at the end, Tilda Swinton is basically like, he's like, you fucked up that shot, but I don't think you fucked it up like by mistake. I think you did it on purpose, because I think he was tired. He was just tired of this life that was like monotonous. Like, you think being an assassin, a high-paid assassin, is sort of a energetic, like, it's such a shocking and crazy job that no people do normally, that it's an exciting endeavor. And then when it just becomes typical business shit, he obviously wanted out, and he put himself in this danger. Either he did it without thinking, or he did it on purpose. You know, you don't really know. It seems like he didn't want to do it on purpose, but I think that I think he was just trying to find a way out, because the fact that he does his job so well, he basically he dug himself out of this hole that he dug himself into. That's what my interpretation is. I think that he was just tired of everything and said, I want to, fuck it. I'll go be with my girlfriend in the Dominican Republic, and I don't have to worry about this shit anymore. This is my quitting. He could have just taken care of the job, but I think in his mind, like, in his soul and his guts, you know what I mean? Like, his body reacted to what he really wanted to do, was like, just finish this all. Instead of getting the job done and then moving on to the next one, he was just like, nah, I want to be done with this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it makes sense, because, it gave him a reason to just take all these people out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though they did attack his girlfriend, but I'm assuming that he knew that was going to happen. It's part of me, because he was already very, like, paranoid when he fucked up the job, when he was getting away. When he was in the air, when he was, like, flying, he noticed that guy with the socks. You know what I mean? And he was like, Is he here to kill me now? You know what I mean? So I think subconsciously he knew that shit was gonna go down no matter what. And so
pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. Like, the fact that he's like, I'm tired of this, because in the beginning, when we're hearing his monologue, and when he's like waiting in that room to, like, shoot the target, he's really, like, fucking bored. Like, he's just like, he even falls asleep a couple times. He's it's like, it's very mundane. So that makes total sense to me. Yeah, that would be his motivation and for doing this.
And he's not a good guy at all.
He's not. But
because, I mean, like, the one thing that I think is, like, was the taxi driver in the Dominican Republic. Because I think the reason why, and it maybe would have been a small thing, but there's a quick shot.
I cheered during that scene.
I know, I'm gonna get to that. There's a shot where the driver looks into his rear view and looks directly at his face, and I thought, oh, this guy's dead. Even though he didn't do anything, really, he wasn't, like, I don't think he was a bad guy at all. Like, I think that was why he killed him. I think because he looked his face in the mirror. You know what I mean? So, like, that, I was like, oh, he didn't need to kill that dude, although I'm sure there were some people, between the two of us, somebody enjoyed that. The only thing I didn't believe about Dominican Republic in this movie, is that's the second chapter, is I didn't believe how well English these people spoke. Like, that, this was like almost like a 1980s movie. Like, I was surprised that the characters didn't say a Spanish catchphrase, like, comprende, like, after they speak in perfect English. And I also didn't see anybody playing a radio outside of your window, so I didn't.
Well, you know what's funny? The guy had a radio. The guy had one of those, and I was like, this is perfect.
And he took it and he smashed it on the floor.
Yeah, he smashed it.
You must have been like, oh, this is the movie made for me.
And then, I was.
Technically, do you think it's like, this is like the zenith of his technical skills? Like, he's just like, I mean, it's just like beautifully edited film. Like, even the part where, because he plays, they play the Smiths throughout this movie. And I know the song that they play at the very, when he's about to assassinate the first guy. I know that song at the back of my head. And the fact that they didn't cut the song at all, they didn't chop up the song to edit towards the film. Like, the song is playing through, because I would sing the lyrics that I knew of the song, and it hit the moment that it's supposed to hit. So they just basically, I in my head, I saw the timeline, on the edit, where they just put the song there and they knew to mute it at one part and then put it, I was like, oh, such beautiful, beautiful editing. Fincher and the editors for, like, Edgar Wright are, like, two of my favorite editors. I don't know by their names, but, like, it's sort of like when Tarantino had his editor, unfortunately the late the woman who used to work for Tarantino. like there are editors where you will remember their work. You know what I mean? Like they like, work hand in hand with directors, and I don't know if Fincher always uses the same editors. Just like
Kirk Baxter.
Okay,
Kirk Baxter.
so that guy
he's done all his films since I think Zodiac. But well, it was a team. It was the guy who did Zodiac, then Kirk Baxter, and that guy became a team, and they did Social Network. Okay. They won Oscars for Social Network and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
And they're talking about. They're actually talking about a follow-up to Social Network, which would make me so fucking happy. I would love to see. Social Network is one of my favorite films of all time. It's one of those strange events where, like, I will watch films with just sort of, dialogue happening, but Fincher always does something with, like, crazy editing and, like, just the way his films look. And that's sort of like when Social Network for me this year, Social Network would have been Oppenheimer. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just sort of like dialogue films that are strong, but it's so well done that you're like, holy crap! And hopefully we'll do an Oppenheimer episode soon. But that's what I feel about Fincher with this material, because I'm just like, Jesus Christ! Even the first 10 minutes, because people were complaining about the opening of him just doing the monologue. I was like, no, this is great. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Was there anything that didn't work for you with this?
I'm gonna be honest with you, bro.
Uh-oh.
No.
Good. Okay, good.
Like this film, it really reminded me of Panic Room in the sense that
there you go. That's what I was gonna ask you. Go ahead.
He knew he wanted to make this not necessarily just because the story like grabbed him. It was because he was like, all right, this is a perfect way for me to just like create technical stuff like scenes and
it feels like he was having fun doing his like bag of tricks.
Yeah,
like, he wanted to make this movie 20 years ago.
Yeah, like put scenes together, edit them. Like his films have become the things that make them work the best is the edits, is the way he cuts things together, and you could tell that like when he's shooting, he knows exactly how he's gonna cut it. Because it works so well, you know what I mean? So it's like I felt like that's what he did with this. It was, and
it doesn't feel like it's sleepwalking. It doesn't feel like he's going through the motions of directing. That's the great thing about it, because he gives a fuck, because he's at the pinnacle of minutia with making his movies.
The minutia, because what he's doing too is like he's also doing like the technical stuff, the shots, the edits. But he's also focused on what the character is doing. Michael Fassbender's character, the killer, doesn't... I forget how many lines of dialogue he says in this film out loud. Uh-huh. It's like close to like 12. It's like 12 lines or some shit like that. I read it. I was reading it. I was like, wait, he did? Because everything is his like inner monologue.
And you always hear narration as like laziness, but I thought it worked fantastic. Just like American Psycho worked.
Because we're in his head. We're in his head. So, but the thing that makes his films work is because is the performances of the character, like their faces, their expressions. Like when he looks at something, it's not just him looking, it's the audience is aware that something's happening. And so that's what makes it, in a film like this, that's what makes it work to another levels, because he's not just focused on the technical aspects, he's also focused on the characters, but in a visual sense of just them looking, the way they walk, the way he like drinks his water, the way he like puts his earbuds into his ears, like all that stuff is the extra layers that what Fincher is bringing to it, other than having fun on a like technical level.
So this certainly does feel a movie that would have been released 20 years ago for sure, even earlier than that. And I think that I don't know what else he must have learned from 20 years then till now. But I certainly think it would have just been as quality back then as it is now.
Sure.
Especially we obviously got to talk about that fight scene. It's one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen in a movie, like ever. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine people in the theater the people in the theater that were expecting the movies that you and I were sort of, thought of from that tagline, that would have been like him versus 100 people at once. I'm sure that satiated them to see that on a big screen, that one fight scene that's in this movie. Because that one fight scene is worth like 100 fight scenes in a John Wick movie. Do you know what I mean? It's just like brutal. And it's beautifully staged.
It's brutal.
And it hurts.
And it never feels...
just watching it.
Yeah. It never feels like, the thing with John Wick, I mean, I like those movies.
They're good. Movies,
but they they get to a point where it just becomes like a dance,
right?
And then you start like losing the connection because you're like, fuck, this is so choreographed, you know.
My dad watched the first two movies. I'm sorry, my dad
Yeah.
watched the first two John Wicks, and then he saw the third one. And by the third one, he was like, "This is just all violence." And I was like, "What other fucking John Wick movies did you see?" I'm like, "That's all it is." And my turning point, I still like the movies, but in one of the movies, John Wick falls off of a roof of a building and hits the floor, and then he walks off. And I was like, "Okay, this is kind of like, you know, I haven't seen part 4 yet. I'm gonna watch that." But yeah, you're right. Like, it's just like this here felt brutal and felt real, and man,
felt real. And
this guy falls.
And you know what?
That guy when he falls on the leg of the chair and it goes up his ass, and you hear they did it with the soundtrack. Obviously we have to talk about. Well, we don't have to talk about. We just have to note that Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor did the soundtrack. Great guys have just been killing it with soundtrack. The Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem soundtrack was fucking great.
That's
Holy
awesome.
shit,
That's
that
awesome.
soundtrack for that movie. When they're fighting a giant like bug at the end of, they were fighting a giant superfly at the end of that. The soundtrack, it's a children's movie, but the soundtrack was fucking evil. It's great. And they do the same here. So when you hear like, there's like a certain audio sting when the fucking, the chair's leg goes up this guy's ass, and you're just like, ooh, and it's brutal because it's Fincher. But go ahead.
What the crazy thing is too is like, you don't necessarily see it.
No.
Because it's so underlit that when that happens,
it's
when
the
it goes
movement
up his
that he
ass,
does. Yeah, it's the movement
I
of
was
his
like,
body
wait,
where you're like,
did it like at first I was like, did it go through his leg and then I was like, wait, I don't think it went through his leg.
Because there's a
But
part
that's
where he
the great
reaches
thing
between
about
his
it.
crotch. Yeah, he reaches through his crotch
yeah.
and see all the blood. I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, I was in pain when I saw that. But that was great. Like, there was only one part of that where it was like a bad ADR. Because it was like, you're the Dominican Republican guy. And I was like, whose voice is that? But then I realized it was him because he said the same line after. But it was just like, besides that, I mean, like, obviously it isn't a big thing. But I thought the voice came from outside the house or they were watching it on TV. Then I realized, oh no, he was the guy that was in the Dominican Republic. It's a technically brilliant film. Is there anything else that sort of stuck out for you?
Just the techniques that Fincher's is using now, because I feel like he's definitely evolved, especially with, you know, he shoots digitally, you know, like he was one of the first directors to go digital, because I know he hated film when he was shooting it because it was so cumbersome and so
99 takes
the way
Fincher.
Yeah, the way like you could see like now his movies are, because this movie aesthetically, visually looks different than a lot of his other recent movies. Like, it looks different than Gone Girl. We're not Mank, because Mank was made to look specifically like a 1940s film. But let's talk about like Mindhunter and then even Gone Girl. They look different. This one had a very specific, more gritty, more 70s feel. And then
what's the movie Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll ask you after that. No, I was going to say, what was the movie that this is basically...
Go ahead.
Aping. What was that movie that we've seen? I've seen that movie. I can't think of it. It's a very famous French hitman movie.
Le Samurai.
Le Samurai. Yeah, it's basically
Samurai.
It's like a version of that film. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's a version of that film, but then obviously using Fincher's visual style and aesthetics and the way he shoots and all that framing. But he does, like, you could tell like he's very in control now of the digital aspects. Like, obviously we know that there's a lot of shots in here that we don't even know. We couldn't even tell that they were digitally
until we
enhanced.
See, I'm sure the digital, you know. When they did it with Zodiac, I couldn't fucking believe that. I was like, what? And then the Growth Tattoo, when you see complete, like, cities show up, I was like, what? Right. And I'm sure that'll happen here, because I'm sure they weren't flying everywhere else.
Apparently, I just read and they were like, they shot in all these locations for real.
Oh, okay.
But you know, there's scenes like close-up shots, obviously car shots, that he does all that on a stage. There's the beginning shot,
airplane stuff, okay.
The airplane stuff, the beginning sequence when he's on the little scooter and he's like getting away, I love that sequence.
Yeah, that's good.
There's shots of like close-ups of him and his like looking right at his eyes, like that's all studio stuff. So he's very.
There was one very obviously CGI shot too. I'm sorry to cut you off. It had to be CGI because it looks like the opening credits of his movies, his recent movies, the part when he shoots the nail gun into the boss's chest, and it's so extremely close up that there's no way you could get like a perfect, nail gun shot from such a small, thing. Very obviously CGI. That was my only thing at the beginning where I was like, when I first saw when the movie just started, it started opening like. The opening credits are great, but it almost felt like a TV show. And I was like, you know what I mean? I was like, but I was still like, what am I talking about? It's Fincher. Of course it's going to be good. But that's the only thing because like, that was very obviously CGI. But other than that, like, it didn't stop the movie for me, obviously. But like, that was a technical thing that he does in movies when he certainly needs it.
And for this one, like, this film a little bit felt like a COVID film to me. Did it feel like that to you? Because they did shoot it.
There was like very little amount of people on screen.
Because there was very little among people. Like there are crowds when they're outside and stuff, obviously, and when they're in airports. I
could see that for sure. Yeah.
But you could tell like the majority of the film was Fassbender by himself doing shit, and it's like, oh, I get it. But that's totally fine. I was like, this is perfect. But then he's doing this thing now where like a lot of this film has the look of like handheld, right?
And I was surprised with, because I know you used to point out that he did a lot of just static, and now there was handheld in this. He doesn't shoot. He rarely shoots handheld. But this is what I realized, and I can't confirm this 100%. Those are all digital. That's all digital handheld because he did the same shit in Mindhunter. I remember the sequence in season 2 when Holden is trying to get to that parade where like they're doing like a little and he's carrying the cross. Okay, right.
And he's like running with the cross.
Digital handheld is?
So it's shot statically or with on a tripod or like on whatever the case may be, a gimbal or like on a track, whatever dolly track.
So this is like a post thing that happens.
It's adding the shake in post.
Wow.
And so he did it in Mindhunter in that sequence when Holden's running. Right. It starts static and then it just starts getting shaky. But he did it, I can almost guarantee, I'm sure there's a couple shots that are actually handheld, but for the most part, those shots, because you could tell. But the thing is that I like it.
It makes sense that he would want control over a static image to then do what he wants.
That's what I mean.
That's very smart.
He's to the point where he's manipulating the entire image. He's like, I'm in control of everything. I don't, because I saw a behind the scenes photo of one shot that is handheld in the movie, but they were on a dolly. The camera was static on a dolly. So I was like, see, I know that he shot it statically. And then he added that in post.
So what did you think about Fassbender in the role?
I mean, he was great. I mean, he's good in everything.
He really
everything that he does, he's good. So it's like, this is no difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I think he's a guy that struggles between finding good. Because the thing is, when he's sort of in the regular sort of drama film, say like 12 Years a Slave or... what was the other one where he's like a sex maniac? Shame. What's that? Shame, right. As opposed to him trying to break through with like genre films. Like, you know how Jake Gyllenhaal tried and he would just do like Prince of Persia and be like, oops. So like with Fassbender, even he did, what was that? Assassin's Creed. And people were like, what the hell? You know, they were like, who wants to see this? But like, he's a damn good actor. And when they try to pick, genre films, it seems to be like they always screw up. Like they always pick the wrong genre film.
Well, he was an X-Men
genre film, right?
He was an X-Men.
Perfect in X-Men. He's fantastic.
He was perfect.
When you see like Ian McKellen and what the hell is Professor X? Patrick Stewart, and you're like, who the hell is going to play these guys? And that I'm telling you, that was the only Fox decision that was smart. In the rest of besides First Class, which I love that movie. The Matthew I forget his last name. The guy who did all the Kingsman movies, Matthew Vaughn movie. That was perfect casting between having him, Fassbender, and the guy from Split.
McAvoy.
What's his name?
James McAvoy.
Right. Perfect. So I think what's happening, and this is a genre movie. There's no fucking question. This isn't like some deep thinker of a movie. I think if you sit and obviously there's a deep message in this film that I think you kind of have to scratch through to get. That's what I got from it from before, was this guy was just tired of his life. And I think it's a perfect venue for when he wants to make this type of film. But Fincher's not a normal genre filmmaker, and you can see that because like even like the promotional artwork, which is like this sort of painterly, sort of graphic, which reminded me of a Samurai, but sort of like an updated cyberpunk look to it. The posters for this have been fantastic. Soundtrack's fantastic. All the Tilda Swinton is great. The fight scene is great. Like, it's just like 10 out of 10 altogether. I don't know, the rating is 10 out of 10, but why do you think he made this film? Like, I think I might have hinted it to it before. Obviously, it's a passion project because he could have went a whole bunch of different. For him to jump from Mank to this, do you know what I mean? It sort of seems like he was trying to go a certain way with his film. Sort of like, you know how, and I don't mean to compare directors, but obviously with Oppenheimer now, that director has been, you know, inching to sort of make his big films, and now I think he wants to do James Bond films. So he sort of made his peace with Oppenheimer and wants to do James Bond. But now, like, Fincher sort of was just like, I did my movies, and he only had a 4-year deal, Fincher, with Mank to now. So I think next year will obviously be the last one. But it was like 2020 to, I assume 2023 would be 4 years. So I don't know.
I don't know if the 4 years means you get four movies out of it, or he just gets
I think
whatever
4 years is
amount
just
of
like
movie.
is like a thing where they just hold on to you for 4 years, because recent things he's been saying is like he's not happy with movie theaters. He's like, I think there was a quote, I don't want to misquote him, but one of the things that they were saying that he says that theaters are slimy and gross and Netflix is the future. So I think he's very happy with Netflix. And if this is the kind of content that we're going to get from him, especially with at least the first couple seasons of House of Cards and Mindhunter, you know, I'm happy with him. Like, I feel film theaters have lost out, you know, not having Fincher there exclusively. But I think that, you know, any material that this guy puts out is clearly of the highest quality of material that you can get watching cinema. Like, the guy bleeds cinema. You know, there's only so many directors that were like, yes, I want to see his movie, and run out and see it.
What I think happened with him is that, you know, primarily, you know, he was influenced by movies of like the late 60s and the 70s, which are these very, what I heard him say it in a commentary once. He's like, I like to make footnote movies, you know, movies that they're not meant to break tremendous ground or win Oscars or become classics. They're just movies that you love, that are really good, and you just watch them and they're good. And then, but they're not, you know, mind-blowing or groundbreaking. And I think he likes to make those type of movies. Like I said again, he made.
I think they're mind-blowing and mind-breaking. You know? But
that's they're mind-blowing to us. But in a sense that, you know, even something like Gone Girl, you know, when he made that decision to make that film,
and that was
I was like, wow, it was a huge. I think it's his biggest grossing film up to date, and I was like, really, he made this? He wants to make this film? And then when you read the novel. Because I read the book before I saw the movie, when I knew that he was going to make it, and I was like, you know, it's weird. The book is almost exactly like the movie, but you're not watching.
The book wrote the movie. That's why.
Yeah, but once Fincher directs it and puts a stamp on it, it's a completely different movie. It becomes this dark, you know, and the book has dark moments too.
And it makes absolute sense when you watch the movie. Yeah, it makes absolute sense that he adapted that book.
Right, but he probably just read it and was like, "Oh, this is a great story. I just need to make this." But I think for like stuff like The Killer and what he might do next is just he just wants to make things that he likes. You know what I mean? Like, he's not trying to. I feel like at the beginning of his career, he was really, and because the whole environment was so different back then, that everything was like, you know, it was to put it in a theater and to make, you know, to make money and to like, it was always an event when he released the film, even if he wasn't known yet. But that was the goal, was to put it in a theater, and it had it. Now it's a whole completely different thing. Yeah. But I feel like he doesn't have that pressure of like, I have to make these great films. Like, I felt like that's in the I have a small feeling that I'm sure he had 3 or 4 movie ideas that he told Netflix,
and this was like a backup one, and said, I can do this one easily. Like, and not to take away from this film, you know what I mean? But I feel like this is like a choice that, like, instead of making like another Mank type of film, like a big, you know, Oscar bait film, that he had 2 or 3 more ideas, and then they were like, oh no, I can do this one. I've been waiting to do this for 20 years. And they said, yeah, fuck it. Here's your $100 million to make it.
Well,
and I don't.
Well, he was supposed to do
sounds negative me saying that, but I feel like this is a movie that he knew he could do with his eyes closed, but make it beautiful. Do you know?
I guess.
I don't know how you can say that without making it sound bad. And I don't mean it in a bad way, but I feel like he had like.
No, I get you. But I think he's also said in interviews that he wanted to make a film like La Samurai, and there's other movies that he keeps saying. Don Siegel, who was a director from the 70s that did Dirty Harry. Like, again, they would just make these footnote films that were like really great, but they weren't like these groundbreaking. Like, they weren't like Godfather, where people would just talk about them for years and years. It's like you watch them, and they could almost be forgettable in certain ways, but he elevates it to the point where like we're like, oh my god, we love it.
They always become revered no matter what. Yeah.
Right, they become revered no matter what because it's him. You know what I mean? But that's the type of films that he likes. You know, and I feel like now he's getting the chance to make them. I felt like before
how do you feel the Killer stands up, you know, next to his other movies? How do you feel the Killer stands up to those?
It's hard to say, but I know that I'm going to be watching this film a lot.
I'm going to watch it.
You know, but
I know that for sure.
Yeah, like I feel like it's there with like The Game.
Yeah. There's a specific versions of film that he does, like The Game or Panic Room. That this movie for sure fits in that mode. You know what I mean? As opposed to like Fight Club and Seven, which are like their own sort of stratospheres that they're dealing with their own way. But this certainly fits into his more mainstream era of films.
And those movies those movies are way more complicated in their everything, their concepts, their story, the way the characters. They're way more complicated than Panic Room, or I would say The Game is kind of complicated too, but that's more of a very dark, fun film. It's an entertainment film, and I feel like this is what this is.
And it also relied on its twist at the end at The Game, which he doesn't really do.
And you know what's funny? Early on, you know, David Fincher he was almost getting to the point of becoming like an M. Night Shyamalan in the beginning. Oof. I just realized this because after Seven, when, you know, the twist in that movie, I feel like he was expected to make twist movies after that, and for some reason he ended up doing it. Now I don't know if that was something that he did that he thought of, or he just loved the scripts, because The Game has a twist at the end, and then Fight Club has a twist.
Obviously, yeah.
And so I remember like thinking at the moment when I saw The Game, I didn't see it in theaters, I rented it, but I remember because I was such a huge fan of Seven, I was like, I gotta see this guy's next film. And then when I saw The Game, I was like, oh, is he just gonna be the guy that just makes twists? But he just obviously he didn't become that.
More competent.
But it's weird. It's weird to remember that time that there was a little moment where he made like back-to-back films that were twists.
It might have been, might have been like, well, you got money. Which one has a twist in it? What's the next one? Here's your next big budget for it. And then once that twist didn't work, because obviously Fight Club wasn't the big hit it was supposed to be at the time, he moved on.
Yeah, he was like, that's why he did Panic Room. He was like, I gotta do something where it's like simple and I could just like fuck around.
People can see it in theaters.
Yeah. And that movie was successful.
It was packed.
Me too.
When I saw it in theaters. So
it made $100 million, and back then it was a big. That was a big gross.
So, do you have any final thoughts on The Killer? Is there anything else you want to talk about with The Killer?
No. I really enjoyed it. I know a lot of people have trouble or issues with the ending. I felt like the ending was just what it needed to be.
Yeah, I think the fact that he didn't kill the guy at the end shows his growth, that he was like, I'm not going to kill this guy because the guy's not obviously, he killed a taxi driver earlier on in the film, and I think that later on throughout the film, and I don't know if that affected this, maybe that's just my interpretation, that maybe it didn't affect him like I think it affected him, but I think towards the line at the end, he wanted to really get those two killers, the two assholes that messed with his girlfriend, but I think that he had the same choice that he did with the with the taxi driver, with the guy at the end, the rich asshole.
He did.
And he knew that guy wasn't going to be a problem for him. Because the guy was like, basically like, oh, fuck, things happen. But who knows if that guy was bullshitting himself. And then he flies away to Dominican Republic. And I guess in the film, he doesn't blink at all. I didn't know that until after I read this. And so at the very end, when you see that weird muscular twitch in his eye, and he forces his eyes to close, at the end is like supposed to be showing that even though he's looking off at something at a distance, he can finally get some rest.
Right.
So I like that.
Yeah, and I
mean, go ahead.
No, I feel like this film could be like they could have a continuation, or like
I would
more
watch it
films.
For sure.
Like I feel like this is a perfect character where you could just do different situations and films. But
it's 10 books, so.
Oh, okay. But then again, like
I don't know what they took from those books though, so I don't know if they took from each of them.
I feel like they didn't take much, bro.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. Like from what I skimmed, I only skimmed the first and the last, and it didn't seem like anything was part of it. I know he has a girlfriend in the book, but I don't want to spoil what happens in the book. But like it didn't seem like it was connected at all, so I wasn't sure. I think they had a good idea about it. Loose adaptations happen a lot with films.
Yeah. I think they just took the concept. Yeah. They took the concept and the character, and they were like, "Oh, this is cool. We can make a cool film out of this." And
they did a great job with this
that's
one.
What they did.
And for him to work with Andrew Kevin Walker again is fantastic. So I was happy with it. The movie felt very smart. It moved quick. I was glued to a screen. I was glued to the screen watching it. I loved it. What rating would you give The Killer, 2023, directed by David Fincher and by Andrew Kevin Walker?
I would give this a 9. 9.5, maybe 9.5. I don't know, a 9.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know if you can rate David Fincher films. Maybe
that's true.
I wasn't.
Yeah. We're fans.
I wasn't that happy with Mank.
Okay.
In a sense that only because it's not a rewatchable film, because it's a very specific. He's trying to capture a very specific era and time, and it's based on real events and real things that were happening, and I don't know. It's just a film that's like, it's not like this one where you could just be like, I'm just gonna watch it because I want to watch this sequence
right
in the beginning, or I want to watch the fight scene.
That's a dedication of time you have to put towards that type of film. Mank, I guess.
Mank, it's like you got to watch it and you got to.
Because Mindhunter's quasi based on real life stuff, so I mean it's sort of the same thing, yeah. But that Mindhunter handles it differently because it feels like it has this not to say it a bad way, but it has the stench of a genre show on it. You know what I mean? Even though it's very smart and well done.
It's so engrossing because, like you said, the film Mindhunter is like dialogue driven too. Like most of the scenes are them talking in rooms with people, but it's so engrossing because of the subject matter. Because they're of the people that they're speaking to, and the subjects that they're speaking about killings, and they're trying to get psychologically into people's heads, and it's like that's so fucking interesting. You know what I mean?
So I mean, I myself, I was gonna give it an 8.5, but it is a 9. I can't help it. It's Fincher. I mean, we apologize to anybody who probably has issues with Fincher, but it's obviously a 9 out of 10, or even 10 to 10 to some people. I'm trying to be like a little bit more diplomatic and give it a 9 out of 10. A 9 out of 10. Fighting a guy and kicking his ass so hard he ends up getting a butt plug from a chair. So with that, Deckard, give me one final.
Yeah.
You got something else to say? Go ahead.
I just got one thing. That line where he says, "I don't give a fuck."
Yeah.
That's David Fincher. I feel like that's him.
For sure. That's he wants to make the movies that he wants to do.
That's him speaking.
With that famous line, what is your one final word for the hard deconstruction?
I don't know. Sleep.
And this has been the hard deconstruction. Thanks for listening.